Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. Another car video today, so pardon the background noises and that airy sound you might hear. Wanted to do a video today on the topic of humility. Humility and just life in general, and in a potential grid down, SHTF, post-apocalyptic, whatever you want to call it, type scenario. Humility is what I've come to find. I'm 33 years old right now, and I've come to understand that humility is one of the most empowering states of mind that a person could ever be in. It kind of reminds me of exercise. You know, when a lot of people have the misconception that when you're in the gym, you're actually getting stronger. And it's actually when you're in the gym, you're kind of what they call catabolic. So you're breaking down tissues. And in breaking down those tissues, you're stimulating the growth of more tissue. But that doesn't happen until you rest, until you stop doing what you're doing. That's when you become what they call anabolic, is when you relax, when you recover, when you, dare I say, listen and not talk. And, I make a lot of videos. I have a lot of ideas. I'm an ideas person. My ideas aren't always necessarily thorough, but I try to put ideas out there for the masses to gestate, into something more, hopefully, or potentially, and sometimes I do go into depth with some of these ideas that I put out. But I've always sort of been more of a creative-minded person, always been more of an analytically minded, thinking type person. I've never really, when I was younger, I did really well on math, but later on in life, I didn't really enjoy mathematics and language arts and things of that nature, but I did very well in terms of analytical testing and stuff like that. So I just wanted to make this video to talk a bit about, how for me, humility is a state that I'm coming to cultivate more of, and I'm starting to really challenge myself to restrain that part of me that wants to correct others who I might know are factually incorrect. Now, there's a lot of instances where I am incorrect, and I'm sure this is the same for everybody, obviously. As human beings, there's times when we're in error and we make mistakes, and such is the nature of learning. Without making mistakes, without failure, one cannot succeed. So, aspire to failure, some would say. And, I can totally relate to that in a lot of ways. Because I've found personally that when I'm overconfident, when I think that I know it all, that's when my performance begins to suffer. And there's a saying that I think I actually made it up. I can't remember. I've been saying it for so long that I think that I'm kind of quoting myself when I say it, but it's something like, when you think you got it figured out, just stop thinking. Now, people can be ignorant if they want to. I've always known this, but practicing it and restraining one's emotional, outbursts and trying to protect one's ego typically brings us down to the level of arguing with fools who will beat us at their own game, essentially. And what I'm trying to do is to let people be ignorant, let people be proud of themselves. Because that old saying, pride cometh before the fall. And I can't remember, I think it was actually a prepper who had said that quote. And it might have been, I'm not going to say who it might have been because it might not have been. But pride cometh before the fall. And I've been starting to not necessarily empower fools in their talking points. And I don't want to necessarily say fools. I'm pretty generous in my evaluations of people, being a counselor and all. But people who are playing the fool, I should say. I don't think anybody is necessarily condemned to be foolish. It's an attitude thing, So if somebody wants to be ignorant, I'm starting to take the approach of let that person be ignorant, because on a long enough timeline, assholes get wiped, and the ignorant shall reap the consequences of their ignorance at some point. It may, the false sense of confidence that it might bring someone to put somebody else down or to subjugate another person or to compare themselves more mightily to somebody else. Whatever sort of pride they get from that, it's not going to actually get anything from them. You don't get anything. I don't get anything when I talk and make these videos. All I get is the hope that somebody is going to respond and give me more knowledge, because I do not learn anything by talking. It's impossible to learn and talk at the same time. It's impossible for me to be outputting information while inputting information. So as much as I want to share my ideas, I know that it's in vain if I do not get feedback and I do not get more ideas from people who perhaps have different ideas than me, or who can build on those ideas, who have their own ideas, or just more, perhaps skills in certain areas, So I totally I'm starting to embrace different opinions more. Oh, it looks like I'm running out of gas. Wasn't prepared for that, ironically. But I'm really starting to try to restrain that part of myself that wants to be right. Not so much wanting to be right, but to learn. Because whether somebody's, no matter what form ignorance takes, it doesn't get anybody anywhere. And for me to dignify it by, trying to argue with somebody about something trivial and taking things personally and stuff like that is not doing anything for me. It really isn't doing anything for them either, And I used to be pretty quite the firecracker when it came to that kind of thing. I used to really want to put people in their place. And I've realized that in doing that, I'm wasting my time, I'm wasting their time, and I'm just enabling stupidity in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things I'm wrong about. There's a lot of mistakes that I make, and when I do make a mistake and somebody points it out, I like them to provide details. I like them to go into depth about it. And I recently had a video that I I put up maybe about a month ago. It was called SHTF, the Imminent Pandemic. And a subscriber, General S. Lee, had, did a video response about it. And it wasn't really about the topic itself. It was about something I said sort of off the cuff there. And, he was very thorough in his explanation of, his reasoning for that specific aspect of the video that he disagreed with. And with that, I was very content with that response, because it was very thorough, although I didn't agree with it, but it was thorough, and it was, he expressed his views, and, I respect that. And there was no attempt to silence the other person or, censor the other person. We can have respectable debates, and that's what I like about this sort of community of YouTubers, which stand aside, I think, from the normal community of preppers. When I say normal, I mean like the big names, there's the big names in the prepper community, who don't really, perhaps they're too big now to really, communicate a lot with their subscribers and stuff. But there is a community of us, and that, talk with one another, and we sort of think about scenarios, we brainstorm things, and we try to learn from each other. And I think that's one of the things that intrigued me into making a channel in the first place, was to hear and see people communicating with one another in ways, that were respectful, and in spite of disagreeing with each other, we can be adults, and we can recognize that, we don't know everything, The philosophy of epistemology, which is concerned with the pursuit of knowledge, and this idea that, do we know anything? Knowledge of your ignorance of, or what you're being ignorant of, is true wisdom. Lots of people assume they know, when the reality is there's so much that they don't know. And that's where I think wisdom comes in. Wisdom is realizing what you do not know. Realizing how small you are. And humility doesn't have to be passivity, Humility is not being passive. Humility is assertiveness. Humility is speaking your mind, not in a cocky way, not in an overconfident way. Humility is just being truthful, but at the same time realizing that there's a chance that you might be wrong. It's when people get aggressive and passive aggressive, and we all struggle with those kind of things. I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect. But I really think that in an SHTF scenario especially, those ignorant people who are bottom feeders, intellectual bottom feeders, intellectual midgets, no offense to midgets or people with dwarfism, but people who are just stuck on stupid, so to speak, let them run their course. The marauding types, the looting types, how long is that going to last? If people want to assemble into gangs on the basis of some shared characteristic, and everybody who doesn't have that characteristic they marginalize and treat differently, hey, you know what? That might work for them for a while. That will bring them some social cohesion for a short period of time until it gets them popped, until their bubble gets burst. See, I'm a firm believer that good is stronger than evil. That not to evoke any religiously charged rhetoric or anything like that, but I do believe that the meek will inherit the earth. I do believe that those who can remain humble get the strongest. And I go back again to, I used this example before of PhD students who never get too haughty. They never get too high on their own horse, high on themselves. They always recognize, they never get too excited with what they know. They always recognize that they could be wrong, and very seldom do they talk. Very seldom will you hear them, trying to educate others, because the student, or the most efficient student, is one who learns more than who consumes more than they produce. Because you can't learn anything while you're talking, man. You can't, and I recognize this. So although I might be very prolific with these videos, don't think for a second that that somehow is a reflection of me thinking I know it all. If anything, every video I make, I realize how much less I actually know, because it opens up door after door after door of more ideas. Okay? So, yes, I'm on a roll now where I'm making a video a day. In a few months, might be a video a week. In a few months after that, it might be a video a month. So I'm just going to enjoy it while it lasts. I have a lot of videos planned. I'm booked up for at least a couple more weeks of one video per day. So, but at the same time, I do recognize the power of humility and the power of listening, and it cannot be overstated in every respect. He who listens and humbles himself in the face of, I don't want to say someone who's superior, but mastery, will be the strongest someday. They will be stronger than those who are perhaps stronger than them now, that like to talk shit, that like to trash talk, and think that they are superior to other people, whether it be intellectually, physically, emotionally, spiritually. There was a time when I seen a person who was overweight or obscenely, obese or something like that, and I would have criticized that person for it. I would have said, oh man, like, they really let themselves go. And I still do believe that, hey, personal responsibility, you accept the consequences for the choices you make in life. At the same time, I try to look at the positives. I try to say, okay, there's reasons why this stuff is happening. Some of it is that within the system. Some of it's built in. It's the food, it's the advertising, it's this and that. There is personal responsibility, but I try now to feel more sorry for that person, because I get nothing by comparing myself to that person and essentially saying to myself, I'm better than that person. I get nothing from that. That does not bring me 1 ounce of credibility or money or intelligence. It brings me absolutely nothing to put somebody else down. Unfortunately, in the corporate world and the work world, it does. But in reality, and in the scenarios for which we all prepare, in which there is no rule of law, the only thing that's going to matter, it's not the fake sort of social rank that you've been ascribed for, your ass kissing. It's going to be what you actually know, and that's going to be the result of how humble you were when the grid was up. So try to be empathetic, try to be patient, try to restrain yourself when you want to attack somebody else or put somebody else down, because really it says 10 times more about you than it does about that other person. And perhaps some people aren't at a point where they're capable of understanding what I'm trying to say, and perhaps there's some sort of mental block in the way from them grasping this, which is in part due to that ignorance. And I don't really know how to get around that aspect. Some people are really stuck in the lower, in the sort of lower reptilian brain level of functioning. They're really not willing to explore higher levels of consciousness and cognition. I really feel bad for a lot of the belligerent grunts out there who are just ignorant. But I'm really rambling on, and I suppose I really don't care too much that I'm rambling on. This was going to be a long rant of a video, but by all means, and like, comment, subscribe, and remember that your comments are what fuels me making these videos. Your comments stimulate thought, and without them, without feedback, without that which will propel my evolution along all the dimensions I talk about, then this putting out these thoughts and these ideas, this information is in vain. So that said, I've reached my destination, and Canadian Prepper is signing out.